Wow! Now I have once again been allowed to experience the fascination of Supermoto. How well does it ride? Is it the top dog? What lap time does it put down? And what impressions did I take away from it? The answer is in this video. The Husqvarna 701 Supermoto is, you could say, one of the really big top dogs in the Supermoto segment. For years, it has been waving the flag energetically, keeping the flag flying for a heartwarming, charismatic single cylinder in a segment that not all that many manufacturers really bother with anymore. And it is also true that Husqvarna has a long history with this engine concept. My brother-in-law, I think, still has a Euro 3 model. That thing is stored in his hall like a gold bar and will never, ever be given away again. Although I do know that the fans are absolutely mad about these Euro 3 models. They are rising faster than Nvidia shares. But enough about the business side of things. Let us talk about riding motorcycles. Because with a supermoto like this, especially one as heartwarming as the Husqvarna 701, the moment you climb aboard, you get the feeling, right, there is not much here. It is just the bike and me. And the bike is reduced to the essentials. You have this really big, mighty handlebar and a seat that gives you every possible option. You can move far forwards, far backwards. You find plenty of room, and you immediately notice that the motorcycle has already gone through many development steps. There are lots of little refinements here. Nothing from your body catches on any awkward spot. Nothing feels uncomfortable where it should not. Ergonomically, it is shaped very well. There is a lot of experience in it. And you sit up there on this rolling fire chair, using this conductor's baton to guide the two wheels around the course. After just a few corners, you really do get the feeling that it is only you and that front wheel. And the feeling for the front wheel is something Husqvarna manages very well. Of course, it also helps that this is a good tire, the Conti Attack SM2. It is a good product, road legal, but essentially a motorsport-oriented tire here on the track. You can use it brilliantly here without tire warmers. And then you feel the front wheel and realize, okay, this is not a pure racing machine. It is not unbelievably light or radically extreme, but you do have a precise, direct feeling. Not too nervous as some full-on racing supermotors can sometimes be. Instead, it remains at a level where you say, okay, in a very accessible way, you can really extract a lot from the corners. And that happens relatively quickly. So even if it looks so radical, and even if it perhaps sounds a little intimidating, it is the case that even as a rider who is not quite so experienced, then you build trust in the front wheel relatively quickly. And with that trust, you start carving your line around the track. That works surprisingly well. And that is certainly one difference compared with older generations. But it has already been like this for 2 generations now. This engine is incredibly well set up. In the braking zone, on acceleration, the feeling is tremendously good. You can really use the torque. And the young lads have no idea how much they should appreciate how good and accessible this brutal single cylinder is to ride here. I would gladly invite them to try an older used one or to try old LC4 models. That is something completely different. You get really difficult situations in the braking zones, wheel hop from the rear wheel, strong load change reactions. You do not have that here. This is developed to a very high level. Accessible, but by no means boring. And I would say that is the great strength of this motorcycle. I think it looks insanely cool, wild, radical. But it is accessible enough that you can ride it normally in everyday life. And that lifts it above many other products. This combination of coolness and accessibility is something not many motorcycles have. In principle, you then have the Ducati or the KTM, which work at a similar level. Unfortunately, they also cost just as much, or at least a similar amount. The Ducati is even a little more expensive. But everything that is even more radical, like converted XC supermotos, for example, is simply no longer as accessible and no longer as practical. And everything that is, well, not more harmonious, but more relaxed, does not even come close to this level of coolness and wildness. I have had several long-term test bikes with this generation of engine and also with the previous generations of this engine. At times, we also rode long motorway stages with them. So this engine has my trust. It is not a motorsport engine like the 450 units, where you have very short change intervals. It is a normal engine. And I would say they are getting the maximum out of it that you can still reasonably ask of a normal customer. You have normal service intervals. Of course, you still have to warm the engine up properly so that it gets up to temperature. That is important with such sporty units so that the oil becomes nice and fluid and smooth, and so that it also reaches the very last little corners of the engine. But after that, you can ride it like a normal product, even though it presents itself in such a sporty way. What are the disadvantages? Honestly, I do not really know either. Of course, overall, it is expensive. Yes. On the other hand, the components are good. The frame, the swing arm, all of it gives you the feeling that you are getting something for your money. But of course, you always have to find something to criticize. Otherwise, people will say again that we are being far too enthusiastic and full of praise. I cannot really say anything bad here. It is a cool, brilliant motorcycle, one that gives you an insane amount of fun here, and one where you simply put the key in and ride, without needing 3 university degrees to understand the display. So I would now have to drag something in by the hair just to invent criticism. Maybe, just maybe, this white and this pale yellow will no longer look quite as cool over time once you have rubbed your leathers over it a bit. Apart from that, I think the only real point of criticism is that it simply is not cheap. But everything that is cheap is not as brilliant. So, difficult. I am curious to hear what the fans say about it, what they say about the current model, and how they see this balance. Of course, there is one really tough competitor on the electric front, that is the Stark. And then there is one really tough competitor from Bologna. And I would be interested to know how the community sees it. How, from your point of view, the Husqvarna holds its ground here. Yes, but now let us look at how it holds its ground in the table, whether it is properly up there near the front. Today, we had an asphalt temperature of 28 degrees. I am in pretty good shape. But I do not have that feeling today that, yes, today I can somehow move mountains. I do not have this unbelievable adrenaline bear power inside me today. But I do think it was a good performance. Thanks, people.